both the United States and Japan states. We have continuously held USJI week twice a year, March and September. Last Friday, on February 22nd, our newly elected Prime Minister Shinzo Abe came to Washington, D.C. and had a summit meeting with President Obama, and he gave a speech at CSIS. The title of his speech was Japan is Back. Certainly for the last 7 years, we have produced 6 prime ministers, and such as Abe, Uda, Aso, Hatoyama, Kan, and Noda, and then Abe returned, Abe is back. And however, that's a common understanding among Japanese peoples, and probably even Americans, that Abe administration is different from the previous ones. First, Abe administration will probably last at least a few years, and coalition of Liberal Democratic Party and Communist Party hold the super majorities in the lower house, and many prospects LDP will win the upper house election of coming July. And there will be a very stable majority in both houses. And I understand LDP learned important lessons and received valuable experience during the period of the opposition party. And also there's no internal conflict within ruling LDP. So finally, political stability will be restored. And secondly, because of so-called Abenomics, a highly evaluated Japanese yen became normalized. Tokyo stock market price started to increase. Business society expects Japan's participation to Trans-Pacific partnerships. And also Abe administration declared to abandon zero nuclear policy and will invest in clean and safer nuclear energy and will develop alternative energy resources. And people are now confident in economic growth and recovery. And thirdly, Abe administration will restore the US-Japan alliance, a foundation of Japanese politics, much damaged by DJP administration, particularly mismanagement of the location of US bases in Okinawa by Prime Minister Hatoyama, much deteriorated relationship with the neighboring countries caused by territorial tensions over Senkaku, Takeshima, and Northern Ireland will be changed on the basis of political stability and economic recovery and stronger US-Japan alliance. Because of this background change, this week we'd like to dispatch new way of thinking on US-Japan relations in globalizing East Asian context. There are different events during this USJI week, and we cover such topics as energy, food, climate change, disaster resilience, issue concerning the Korean Peninsula, the relation of US, China, Japan, and Korea on the regional securities, and construction of East Asian communities, evaluation of the administration's growth and economic defense strategies. I am very much confident that these topics satisfy the needs and expectations of US researchers, academics, policymakers, and people in general. Today, we are very fortunate to have a symposium on the topics of disaster resilience 2030, US and Japan. Before introducing Professor Hayashi, I would like to ask the participant for the permission of taking your pictures because for video recording. And so I would like to welcome our moderator, Professor Haruo Hayashi.
Good afternoon. My name is Haruo Hayashi. I'm very pleased to be here this afternoon. And then, as a moderator, we are going to have 3 talks this afternoon, and then by 4 people. And then each of the topics will be roughly 20 minutes, and no questions until the end. And we'll keep set aside 30 minutes for questions and answers. And then the first talk will be given by myself, and this is a kind of basics of today's issue. Today's issue is we are looking at the future. The U.S. have a unique Strategic Foresight Initiative. This is a very future-oriented, a nice program. At the same time, we are expecting to have very big earthquake and tsunami disaster around 2030s. And then we are now preparing for that to improve resilience. And then 2 years ago, it was kind of a rehearsal event we had, the so-called Tohoku Earthquake and Tsunami disaster. This is probably the very similar type of disaster we will have in 2030s in much larger extent. And then let me start by reviewing what happened in 2011. On March 11th at 14:46. That was a Friday afternoon. And that was the very large earthquake, probably the 4th largest earthquake ever recorded in this planet. And it amounted to 9.0 of magnitude. It occurred offshore Miyagi prefecture. As you can see, we have so many aftershocks, and then this aftershock range really indicates we have a series of 3 major earthquakes occurred almost simultaneously. First one occurred off Miyagi prefecture, and followed by adjacent segment north, offshore Iwate prefecture, and then again followed by the 3rd earthquake. There was a southern adjacent segment, offshore Fukushima prefecture, and end up with the 9.0. And there's a blue mountain shape indicates the intensity at the time and also the time scale. So that you can see that this earthquake lasted almost 200 seconds, more than 3 minutes. That was a very long earthquake. And since the epicenters or the seismic zone under the very deep sea, followed by, it is accompanied by a huge tsunami attack. Okay. And then the seismologist said this earthquake was unexpected, but that was not true. This is a map which was published in 2010, 1st of January, and by the Japan headquarters for Earthquake Research Promotion. That was a national government body. And every 2 years, they predict which one will be very high in terms of probability. And then the highest probability was 90% and 99% for the next 30 years. We're at offshore Miyagi prefecture. So we were expecting that earthquake, but we didn't expect this aspect will trigger the other two aspects. And so those end up with much, much larger than we were expecting. And then, since earthquake has a tendency to repeat almost at the same place with almost same magnitude at certain period. So this offshore Miyagi part is over. So now it's very low probability, probably for the next 50 years or so. And then, so that the number 2 will become number 1 for the next 20 or 30 years. That's the western part of Pacific coast. That's the one we are expecting to have as the next one. Okay. Right. Then go back to this aspect review. This was the number of people impacted by this aspect. The JMA has a seismic intensity scale, and the highest number is 7, which is almost 11 or 12 of Mescali modified intensity scale. And 6 plus is like 10, and 6 minus is almost 9. So then the Japanese statistics about disaster indicates if the ground shaking was stronger than 6 minus, it will be devastating impacted area. And then by comparing this shaking intensity distribution with census data, we estimated about 7.3 million people will be were affected. And then, as I said before, the huge tsunami was accompanied. And so almost all area of the Pacific coast line were issued a tsunami warning in 3 minutes after the earthquake. And then we do have very large tsunami attack. And this is the mortality. We have almost 20,000 people dead or missing. And by comparison, the Kobe earthquake ended up with a little over 6,000 people. That was the largest casualty in the Japanese natural disaster history so far. I mean, after World War II history. We had very large 100,000 dead in 1923 Kanto earthquake. After the World War II, that was the largest, but this one nearly exceeded that. And by looking at the geography, this impacted area has 2 different types of geography. Northern half portion is called Rias Coast. It's a very shaggy, hilly coastline. So if you have tsunami, you just go run up to a higher ground, quite easy in a sense. But southern part, it is a coastal plain. It was very, very flat, so that when you evacuate from the tsunami, you have to run or walk many, many kilometers. And then, obviously, the tsunami was higher in those Rias coast as compared with the coastal plain, but mortality rate was not so neatly corresponded with the tsunami height. As you can see, we have so many people died, should be like this, up here. This is a coastal plain area. That's mainly because these people are not so well prepared as compared with the people in the U.S. coast. Yeah, I will go over this later. Okay, and this is the estimation of how high was the tsunami on the second day from earthquake. So for the U.S. coast area, it was very easy to estimate the tsunami height, and by checking the altitude. But for the coastal plain, it was very difficult. But thanks to NGA, this is a satellite photo provided by the US NGA, and we could figure out at the coastal plain, the tsunami was less than 5 meters high. Then we could estimate the number of houses washed away by the tsunami, and then it was estimated a 270,000 houses. It was almost accurate. This was again the second day estimates. And then this is a very landscape scale disaster. 214 jurisdictions have been, in an American sense, got disaster declaration. So that was very, very widespread area. And then for the first few days, it was very heavy needs for rescue. The people evacuated to higher ground or the top of the building and stay there for half day or 1 day or maybe 2 days. And then these people have to be relocated to a much safer area. And this kind of a rescue effort had lasted about a week. And the national government had difficulty to figure out where those people are. And then this is a national secret. They use the TV report. They write down those reports and then Google the location and then make this kind of map. Otherwise, it is so difficult to figure out where they are because 214 jurisdictions have been hit simultaneously. Nobody understands those names of locality. So it was so difficult for them to do that, right? And the problem is the logistics. The roads are pretty much damaged along the coastal line, and then transportation recovery is the next big issue. And then this is the information provided by those Honda, Toyota, and Nissan, and Pioneer. Those are the company which makes a car navigation system. So those systems had 24 hours communication, two-way communication system, so that they put them together information where those cars with their car navigation system were running the day before. And this really helped the other people or even national government dispatchers to select the right route to reach the impacted area. And another big issue was sheltering. About 200,000 people were sheltered for a couple months, and we had about 2,000 shelters all over the places. And to identify the location of those shelters and guarantee the proper supplies became another big issues. And this was probably the first major disaster to introduce a pool-type logistics in disaster relief scene. We used to use the push type. So since the information network is not so good at the beginning of the disaster recovery, the national government and all those relief people decide what the impacted area needs, and then put them into the impacted area. But after a few days, the people do have various needs, and so those needs has to be taken or satisfied by this pool type logistics. So respond to the local needs of the disaster victims. And those are the costs which will be needed to recover from this big disaster. So I can't read it. 30 trillion yen. So it's a very huge, $300 billion. And again, this is the recovery is not a landscape scale issue. And for recovery, 291 jurisdictions were included as part of a national plan. So it's increased as a matter of fact. And then one more twist is the nuclear power plants at Fukushima. Along the Pacific coast in the impacted area, we had 3 nuclear power plants. North one is Onagawa, and we have 2 southern part, Fukushima number 1 and number 2. The Fukushima number 1 is the first commercial nuclear power plant built in Japan. So, and the tsunami was higher in Onagawa, but somehow Onagawa was okay. And only the Fukushima number 1 was like this, had a failure. And I don't know why, but yeah, yes, I just say, I don't know why. But because of this explosion, 20-kilometer radius have been set for post-evacuation. And about, within this region, we have about 30,000 houses. In other words, about 100,000 people are forced to evacuate out of this site. And many people left the Fukushima and went to all over the Japan. And as of end of March, 34,000 people were relocated to a different prefecture. And the number increased as time goes by. And still, many people keep their relocation. And let me just introduce some of the tsunami impact. Among the 20,000 dead and missing, most of them were caused by a tsunami. And so there are very different performances were observed in relation to tsunami impact. And this is how the casualties are large in compared with the past Japanese disasters. The 1995 red one is the Kobe earthquake, and it was way, way high at this time. And the performances are very different depending on the jurisdictions. Some of them got very high mortality rate, even though tsunami itself was not so high. And some jurisdictions performed very well, even though the tsunami was very high. And let me introduce 4 of those, good cases and bad cases. This is the best case, probably. It's a Kudai village in Iwate prefecture. This village has no casualty because of the lessons they had from 1896 tsunami, which washed away entire village. So they decided to move their village inland and also created the water gate at the river mouth with the height of 15 meters. And tsunami actually was higher than water gate level, but because of this, it didn't reach to the village itself. That's why nobody killed. Okay? Another example is a tunnel area in Miyako City. This looks bad. This area is very famous for this kind of bank to protect the town from possible tsunami attack. But in reality, this time tsunami exceeded the height of the bank, and nothing left except the bank safe. Okay. So if you look at the bay, you could find out that those tsunami marks. The higher one was 1896 tsunami, and lower mark is a 1933 tsunami. And this time, because of those damages to the tower, you could see the height was about same as the 1896. But they built the bank with the height of 1933. So that's why all the houses were washed. But mayor of this city is from this region, but he said that we will recover, definitely, because the young children were not killed. Even though more than 150 people were killed in this town, but very little casualty for young children. So the mayor himself said, we can recover. Yeah, we will be back, probably. Okay. Then, this is the worst case. Okay, it's Natori city. This is a suburb of the Sendai. It's a big city with more than 1 million population. And these suburbanites live very close to an ocean with little attention to ocean, okay? And then the Natori was the highest mortality rate for the height of tsunami. Why? They have a bank that they expected the tsunami of like 2 meters high, but this time it was 3 meters. It was just the difference is 1 meter, but this is a flat, very, I said, coastal plain area. So once the tsunami got into the inland, it will keep going. And if it's a 500-meter inland, nothing left. The debris stacked at around 3 kilometers inland. So these people do not expect a tsunami because of they don't have any experience in a previous tsunami attack. So they believe that no tsunami will hit. And then the large tsunami nearly washed the suburb away. And so this is the end of my introduction. The best practice of this. In this area, no students were killed because of very effective evacuation exercise down at the junior high school. The story is kind of sad story. So this area, because of the decline in population, the local high school have been shut down. So the junior high school became the highest grader in that region. So that this junior high school decided to treat them as the local leader for helping the local people. And they practice those tsunami evacuation or all kinds of disaster preparedness very intensively. Okay, then this is what happened. The red mark is where the junior high school located. According to the past record or the numerical simulation, their junior high supposed to be okay, but the blue ones is a real tsunami attack this time, and they were forced to evacuate. Like this. Somebody took this picture. It was kind of interesting. Okay? And then first they went to this place, and this was the place where they planned to evacuate. But this place was not so safe because of a landslide. So they decided to go higher. And this picture really indicates their training really worked. So those junior high school students bring the primary school pupils together and along with the local residents to higher ground. And then when they reach the higher ground up here, they looked back, but tsunami was coming. So they started to rush up to higher ground. Then, finally, they reached this place. And when the tsunami was over, the entire school building was filled with debris by tsunami. And this kind of very serious evacuation was successfully completed by these efforts they have done almost every month for 4 years. So these are probably the most strong indication of disaster resilience in a region. Okay, then I should probably stop talking right here and to introduce Miss Carol Cameron from FEMA, and she will talk about a Strategic Foresight Initiative. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm going to sit down over here. I have lots of statistics. Thank you so much. My name is Carol Cameron. I'm the Director of International Affairs at the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And I too had the good fortune of going to that junior high school and meeting with the principal, and you're not minimizing it at all. What they were doing was futures planning, which is what I'm going to talk about today. And they had done such a good job of it. I had been in Japan 2 years previously to this disaster, and I had gone to their national level exercise where these same children were heavily involved in the exercise, practicing what they had learned about evacuation and how to take care of one another. So it was really very heartening to me to see that it works. Planning works, training works, evacuation works, and the community took care of one another. And when you walk into this high school now, they've kept it, but it's a building that has been pretty much destroyed. But the lesson plans are there from the day that it happened. It's quite touching. Anyway, I'm here today to talk to you about an initiative that we're doing at FEMA called the Strategic Foresight Initiative. How many people in the audience have had any exposure to this? Leo, okay. I knew Leo would. So here's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about our current strategic trends that we're taking a look at, implications for disaster managers. I'm going to explain how we got where we are today. And I'm going to share with you what we've learned to date and also how you can be a part of this initiative. Ooh, it worked. Each of these circles represents a force or a trend that is driving change in emergency management and also delivering insights into the capabilities, tools, and partnerships needed for success in the future. For example, if you look at coastal population growth, our coastal counties now, and I'm talking about the United States, comprise 17% of the nation's land area, but now contain 53% of the population. And I think we saw a good example of this recently with Tropical Storm Sandy. We also, like Japan, we have an aging population, and the population over the age of 65 in the United States is expected to increase from 12.4% in 2000 to 18.2% in 2025. We've also seen a huge urbanization of our population, and for the first time in human history, more people live in urban rather than rural areas in the United States. And we're looking at megaregions now. We have a huge megaregion on the east coast of the United States, another one on the west coast, and we have megacities, which account for cities that have over 10 million population within them. We had 3 of those cities in 1975, and today we have 21. So you can see people are moving to the coastal areas, which presents a whole new range of planning challenges for all of us. We have a great reliance on technology now. We have automated systems that control our utilities, transportation, and manufacturing. And I think one of the biggest changes that we saw during Tropical Storm Sandy was really the changing role of the individual and how information access is so very different today. We first saw this during the Mexico City earthquake, where we received, not we, but the Mexican government received 45,000 tweets during the first 20 seconds of that disaster. That's pretty breathtaking when you think about it. And with the growth of the internet and social media, people have created virtual communities all around the country, and that's where they rely on information. I tracked this personally with my own family in New York City when Sandy was ready to hit, and you know, we all have Facebook, and I could see the Facebook page just going faster and faster and faster with my family members and also all of their friends talking about where to go for the buses for the evacuation, what zone were you in, where did you need to go. They were getting their information from the trusted source of one another and not the government. So, I mean, I really saw that firsthand personally, and it's the first time that I've been personally involved in something like that where I was fearful for my family, and I was able to see that they were doing all of the right things and they were going to the evacuation zones and getting on those buses. But the downside of that is the average individual, we're exposed to about 3 times as much information today as we were in 1980. So how do you sort through all of that? It's going to be a challenge for emergency management. We have shifting roles of who's paying for what, and states are no longer relying solely on taxes to build up and take care of their disasters and take care of their communities. Federal grants now comprise nearly 30% of states' general revenue. And as we're seeing right now with all of the fiscal activity or lack of activity that's going on in Washington, D.C., that's going to be a big challenge for states in the future. And we're seeing global interdependencies. One of the things that I remember from the Japanese disaster is that people in the United States, a lot of the auto manufacturing had a sole source, single source provider for their auto parts. So it really created quite an economic downturn in the auto industry because they could not get the parts that they needed to be able to manufacture all of those Toyotas and Hondas that we do here in the United States. So auto manufacturers have now moved to not a single source provider, but they're moving more globally to multi-source providers. And I think we also saw another interesting thing in Germany where Germany has closed down its nuclear power plants, now they're commercial nuclear power plants, and nuclear power is no longer being used there. And if my mind serves me correctly, there are only 2 commercial nuclear power plants that are now operable in Japan. Another interesting fact is that chronic conditions are the leading cause of death rather than infectious diseases. And we haven't seen that in a long time, but that couples with our aging population. But on the downside, the other side of that is that the H1N1, that was the fastest moving pandemic that we ever saw in history. And usually influenza viruses have taken about 6 months to spread as widely as H1N1 did. This time it took less than 6 weeks. And in 1948, we had NGOs, we only had about 41 of them that had consultative status with the United Nations. Today there are 3,172. So you see right there how the shift of who's caring for whom has changed. And Walmart's gross domestic product is greater than that of Saudi Arabia. These are a lot of statistics and facts, but I think what they really show is how much our world has changed. Not quite sure what to do. There we go. Okay, so what are the implications for emergency managers? I think we already know that government capabilities are limited and every disaster challenge relies primarily upon individuals, the private sector and community organizations down to the smallest possible scale at the local level. We also see that large-scale disasters involve many, many more partners, but the concept is similar. The government's role and the federal role in particular is limited. The level of engagement, resources, and capabilities across all segments of society will largely determine success in responding to and recovering from a disaster. Addressing these related concerns can't be achieved by improving what we've always done, but we have to change about the way we're going about disaster preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation by better involving the communities that we serve. And I would even go so far as to say we need to start looking not at what happened so much in the last disaster, but we need to look at futures planning. Okay, so what is the Strategic Foresight Initiative? I hope that everybody was able to pick one of these up on your way in. And if you didn't, please stop on the way out to get it. This is a very large project that has a lot of trending information and statistical information. A lot of it's very academic, and I think if you pick up the brochure, you're going to get much more of an insight into it. And at the end of my presentation, I'll give you some information on how you can become better involved and get even more information. So to begin learning about the driving forces of change that could shape our future, we launched the Strategic Foresight Initiative in 2010. We did that by working with a broad swath of individuals from the private sector, academia, non-for-profit organizations, and all levels of government. So we brought a lot of people in, and I think today We have, what would you say, Kimberly, like around 1,000 people that are actively involved in this project. So we'd like to get you on board too. One thing, a caveat on this project does not predict the future or forecast events. Instead, we are analyzing how various trends may play out and potentially drive us down a different path. So we're trying to do things like looking at the lessons that we learned from Japan and look out into the future and not plan for the last disaster, but try to plan for the disaster of the future. One of the things that we're doing at FEMA, we're doing what I would call mega disaster planning, and so we're looking at things across regions rather than just looking at them in individual cities or individual states. We're actually looking at, say, for example, the Cascadia Fault on the West Coast, and we're trying to do that more globally. We're even engaging the government of Canada and in that event so that we can do all of our planning together. And so I think we're trying to do this collectively. We're trying to plan and take action. And there are a number of benefits to the emergency management community. I think we're hoping that this will avoid surprises, promote better information sharing across disciplines and organizations, and explore the latest research that many of you do. This is a real heavy-duty slide here, the drivers of change. So these are all the drivers that the group researched and discussed, and all of them raised a number of implications that the emergency management community should be considering as it moves forward. Among those implications, which we mentioned before, aging infrastructure will challenge response and recovery, and I think we saw that certainly in Japan with the roads. Global interdependencies raise questions about the emergency management community's role in international events, and it poses risks to our economic solvency. Advances in technology, smartphones, tablets, allow access to information and promote a sharing rather than the hierarchical information environment that we are used to living in. And finally, the shifts in the demographics that we talked about earlier, that's really going to drive much more planning into those mega regions that I was talking about. And then again, we have climate change and critical infrastructure needs. And we saw in the wake of Tropical Storm Sandy that climate change and infrastructure degradation are shifting. And I think that's going to be a big challenge in that area. And I'm looking forward to how are these various communities going to be able to solve what they need to do to build back better in the areas that they're living in. And we already talked about the demographic shifts that we have. And technological innovation and dependency, 84% of US organizations use remote commercial servers for data and applications. And one of the other things that Administrator Fugate is very interested in is space weather. And so his big focus really is on that grid, that electric grid. So how do we consider something like that? And I think people were, sort of looking at him and saying, what? Space weather? And then you saw what happened with that meteorite in Russia. So now we're seeing a huge, big stream of groups coming out and trying to start planning for that as well. So, we have all kinds of challenges out there that we've never faced before. So using those drivers, the group also identified strategic needs, and they lumped them into these 3 themes. And the reason they did that was because they realized that we all need to build and in some cases enhance our capabilities as a community. And it's because of all the things I talked about earlier, the demographic migratory shifts. We have to start practicing omnidirectional communication and not just one-way, two-way. And I think if you take a look at the social media, that doesn't mean that that's the only communications activity that you should use, but it's something that needs to be included in the traditional communications that we've always used in our community. And tight budgets and more frequent emergencies, it's really starting to tax resources and personnel. So we're going to have to really leverage the volunteers that are out there, people who want to be part of the solution to all of these problems. And we're going to need innovative models and tools to be able to do our jobs better. And we're going to have to start influencing the development of technology. What kind of technology do we need? And we're going to have people letting the government know what it is they need to be spending their money on in the development phase. And once again, it's got to be the whole community, that we have to have those dynamic relationships. We can't be meeting one another in the midst of a disaster, but we have to do our work ahead of time by making sure that we're inclusionary and that we're not saying that something isn't going to work. I was not a Facebook user for many years. I kept saying, I don't want to do that. But if I want to communicate with my children, that's the way that I have to do it. So I was glad that I got on Facebook. I was able to see how that really helped. Our administrator at FEMA, he's a tweeter. If you ever watch during a disaster and you start watching his tweets, he's over there every second tweeting away. So, once again, it's looking at things in a very broad perspective and trying to make sure that we're including everyone. So here's how you can be involved. This year, we're coming out actually in a few weeks, and if you get yourself logged into all of this, and it's, I believe, also in this brochure, right, Kimberly, on how they can sign up. And if you get yourself involved, you're going to be able to see the Strategic Foresight Initiative 2012 highlights. And it's a little bit different than what we've done over the last 2 years. We've actually looked at innovative solutions that we saw either various groups or in some cases individuals using during disasters that really helped with response and recovery. So one section of this report highlights those individuals and talks very briefly about the projects that they did, and it gives information on how you could connect with them if you wanted to find out more about their project. And also, we're looking back at the drivers and the strategic items that I mentioned before to see how they played a role over the last 2 years and what we need to do to get involved. Anybody's welcome to join the SFI community, and I'd encourage you all to do that because the more the merrier. And collectively, I think we'll be able to come up with some solutions. You can download and read all of the SFI's material on this website that's there, and you can also sign up to be included. And there are, from time to time, webinars that are held where you can be an active participant, ask questions, and get involved. And once again, I would really encourage you all to do that. And now I will turn it back to my boss over here. Thank you.
So let us move to the third presentation by both Professor Suzuki and Professor Maki. And they will talk about our future disaster resilience.
Thank you very much. My name is Shimo Suzuki from Kyoto University. I'd like to talk about what's called mega disasters in Japan, 2030s. I will introduce the list of mega disasters from the aspect of hazard in first 10 minutes. And next 10 minutes, Professor Maki will talk about the social aspect of this risk. And the major issues of our country in terms of mega disasters is the mega earthquake and tsunami disaster that will occur in around the Nankai Trough. Nankai Trough is located in this area, the off coast of southeastern Japan. And we assume 3 earthquakes that will occur in this Nankai Trough eastern part of Nankai Trough, there we assume Tokai earthquake. And for central part, Tonankai earthquake we call, and western part we call Nankai earthquake. And according to the headquarters for earthquake research promotion of Japanese government, the assumed Tokai earthquake will occur within 30 years with the possibility of 88%, which magnitude will be 8.0. And for Tonankai earthquake, the possibility is 70 to 80%, and magnitude will be 8.1. And for Nankai earthquake, the possibility is calculated to 60%, and magnitude will be 8.4. And this is a historical event of Nankai Trough mega thrust earthquake. There is many earthquakes in this area. Earthquakes occur repeatedly with the interval of 100 years. And the event of 1605 we call Keicho earthquake. That was Tsunami earthquake. So the shaking intensity is relatively moderate, but tsunami was very high, and huge tsunami came to the coastline. And next, the event of 1707 we call Hoei earthquake. This is the maximum class of this Nankai Trough mega thrust earthquake since in modern age. And there was a simultaneous rupture of all trough areas. So 3 earthquakes occurred simultaneously. Tsunami came up to the 10 to 25 meters, and death toll exceeded 5,000. And before this earthquake, there was a Tokyo earthquake in 1703, and right after this earthquake, Mount Fuji erupted. So this is a national catastrophe in this event. The next is occurred in 1854. We call Setokai and Senankai earthquake. 2 earthquakes occurred separately in western part and eastern part. There was 32 hours delay between 2 earthquakes. The tsunami came up to 15 meters, and death toll reached to the 3,000. In this event, after this event, Tokyo earthquake occurred in 1955, and next year, storm and heavy rain hit Tokyo, and next year, Tohoku earthquake occurred. And this is the last case, 1944, 1946. There was a 2 years delay between 2 earthquakes. This is a small earthquake and tsunami in the historical Nankai Trough earthquake. So there is a very diversity of earthquake occurrence. And this is the graph of long-term earthquake occurrence probability. I calculated based on the headquarters for earthquake research promotion. You can see that Tonankai earthquake occurrence probability will be highest in 5 years from 2025. And Nankai earthquake occurrence probability will be highest in 5 years from 2030. after the Tohoku Earthquake, March 11, Japanese government devised the framework of hazard prediction and damage estimation because there was an underestimation in this March 11. The hazard prediction and damage estimation before March 11, government uses the maximum of past 300 years. So one model for one nation that could reproduce the maximum of past 300 years. So it is 5 events. And after March 11, the framework has been changed to have 2 levels of hazard for 2 purposes. The level 1 model is ordinary level earthquake tsunami, which return period will be 100 years to 300 years. This includes historical second, third largest earthquake or tsunami. And this is used for the mitigation by developing infrastructure, seawall or city planning. And level 2 model is maximum possible earthquake and tsunami, considering March 11 earthquake mechanisms. So return period will be 500 years to 1,000 years. And this is used for the preparedness, securing evacuation, making evacuation route, evacuation ground, and make hazard map. We use this level 2 model. So Japanese government expanded hazard model to make a level 2 model. Expanding northern bound of fault to deeper region of Great Boundary and southern bound of fault extended to the trough axis and adjoining segment included. This is the earthquake hazard prediction before March 11 and after that. This is the case predicted model of 2003. This is a recurrence of past 300 years maximum intensity. This is the level 2 maximum intensity estimated at each bridge that is released in 2012. And government make 4 cases of earthquake models. The difference of these models is the strong ground motion, generation, areas layout. This is a basic model. From 800 to 1,000 houses will be collapsed in this case, and 90 to 43,000 people will be died. This is the east shift model, west shift model, and this is the inland shift model. This is also the tsunami hazard prediction. This is Osaka Kobe area, including industrial district, port district, and central business district will be inundated by the level 2 tsunami. And this is Nagoya, and this is Kochi. Almost all the city area will be inundated by the high tsunami. And this is Kushimoto, southern most of Honshu Island. Tsunami will come to this area in 2 minutes. from the earthquake. Also, for the tsunami model, 11 cases of models that for large sweep area model assumes. In case 1, 61 to 230,000 people will be dying. This is the exposure of population to the protection and resilience challenge. So this is a figure that Professor Hayashi introduced. So in March 11, shaking intensity 7 is 80,000 people. But in the case of this Nagai Trough earthquake, exposed population to the JMA intensity 7 will be 3 million in the maximum worst case. That's all for my presentation. Thank you for your kind attention.
Suzuki sensei told that the other side, what Japan will experience in 2030. I will explain about societal side. So the diary that was of the Miss Cameron told that the world has changed. So as you know, the population of Japan starting decline from 2004. It means that the world has already changed. So that we will experience that huge event when at the time that our population declined almost 10 million. And we can clarify the regional characteristics of Japan based on the population distribution. And we could find out the 3 patterns. First one is that we call sustainable. It means that we have age of making a kid or child. And second one we call dependent pattern. It means that the population of the making care starting to decline. It means that finally we will lose the younger generation. And third one we call marginal. And we classify based on those kinds of classification. We made those kinds of maps. This is the regional characteristics in 2005. You notice that we can see many sustainable areas, but we will lose major part of those greens in 2030. And you notice that we have many marginal and dependent areas. And this is the area where we will, that Suzuki sensei told big earthquake and tsunami will hit. So that now we have a very big question that Japan can survive to those years. So that this is the kind of situation. And another story that I think that I don't have enough time to explain about that. But I just say that those regional characteristics define or decide the recovery. So that what we should do is that we should prepare for those kinds of hazard, considering that our population aging, and preparing the long-term recovery for those hazards is the only way to survive such a big disaster with aging population. Thank you very much. This is my presentation.
then it is time for question and answers. Probably this is the moment you've been waiting for. So, any questions? Here's first. Okay, you go ahead. The microphone. Could you come to?
Thank you. My name is Yukio Shihisa. I'm a sophomore in the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown University. So my impression of Japan is that a lot of the fundamental functions of the society, like such as government, business sector, educational institutions, are heavily centered in the city of Tokyo, as opposed to a country like China, where they're distributed with more of a balance between Shanghai, Beijing, etc. So in a case of an earthquake hitting Tokyo directly, I don't know how possible that is scientifically speaking, but in that case, how effective would this resilience be? And what would be some measures that we could take to mitigate a disaster impact in Tokyo? Thank you.
Okay, so who will answer?
I think the people from Japan.
So, should I? You can. I think that we have Tokyo metropolitan earthquake scenario. It's gonna be a very huge scenario. Damage will be expected. So we have currently that the worst case scenario is magnitude 7.3 earthquake will occur right under the Tokyo area. And that will cause about 11,000 casualty plus a 112 112 trillion yen. That will be like almost four times larger than the one Tohoku earthquake we had 2 years ago. That was enormous amount of damage we expect. And national government became very serious about potential or the resilience of this disaster. So that now we have two panels, one for a Nankai trough, mega thrust earthquake, and the other one is on Tokyo metropolitan earthquake scenarios. Is that okay? Sure. Okay. Yes.
Good afternoon, thank you. My name is Dennis Walto. I'm from the organization International Medical Corps. We were a first responder in the Tohoku earthquake, and we remain in Japan working with community organizations. I note a couple things, statistics that you didn't bring up that are very important. The latest mobile phone penetration rates in Japan are greater than 100%, right? Greater than 100%. There are more numbers than people, right? But more than 50%, more than 50% of people have 3G or 4G connectivity. I mean, this speaks to the non-state actors. I mean, I hear a lot about the Japanese government really doing a lot in preparedness. But are they engaging non-state actors and community organizations in the preparedness and response planning? Thank you.
Who will answer?
Yeah, actually, the definition of I'm not so clear about the non-government organization. So, but yes, but what actually happened for Tohoku earthquake? I think this is the very first time that the disaster people work with international NGO type of people. So at the time of Kobe, we call it the kind of the year we started the volunteering. And those who experienced the Kobe earthquake really worked very hard for disaster reduction and disaster response relief operations. And they continued their activity up until Tohoku. And what makes them surprised is that working with the international LGOs, and that they are very sophisticated about managing those kind of relief and recovery operations. And I think that from the lessons for the experience of Tohoku, that the Japanese society will change. So that the year of the NGO will start from 2011. Is it okay? Thank you.
I can even add something to that. One of the things that we engage in at FEMA is we do go to Japan a lot, and initially it was to try to find out lessons learned, but we had been going there prior to that because we're working together as part of the global community to share lessons learned. One of the things that we have shared with both the national government in Japan and also some of the prefecture governments is what we did here in Washington, D.C. during the last inauguration. If you'll recall, Obama's first inauguration, you couldn't use your cell phone at all. If any of you were here, it was like a nightmare. My husband and I got separated. I couldn't find him. It was very, very crowded. This time, they put up additional towers so that there would be more capacity for people. And I think that's something we always have to remember during a disaster, that while our cell phones are good, if there aren't a lot of towers, things are going to shut down. You're not going to be able to get through anyway. So that is a lesson that we shared with them.
Yes.
I'm Bob Hershey, I'm a consultant. To what extent are you able to use the internet in coordinating people and getting agreement on what they're going to do in preparing and responding to these earthquakes?
Is there any particular question you want to?
I can start. I don't know if the internet is the right word, but one of the things that happened during Tropical Storm Sandy, there were groups of young students at some of the colleges and universities that self-organized. And they created their own community to get information out. Most of it was, I believe, through Twitter, because they don't have a formalized website at that point. And what I'm seeing is a big shift on people not using the internet standard websites so much anymore as they are the push out of information through groups that use Twitter and also use Facebook. I think we've seen a big shift at FEMA with Facebook users. We have our own Facebook page, and now we're starting to see more activity on our Facebook page and our Twitter account than we are through our traditional website. So I think it is shifting. And once again, these groups self-organized, but then once they were organized, they connected themselves in with the local emergency managers. And one of the things that we have at FEMA is something called community relations teams that go out. And their traditional role was smiles and hugs, is what I used to call it. And they would go out and they would say, you're going to be all right, here's a sheet of paper, you can go somewhere else and stay, here's a shelter, whatever. Well, now they do much more than that. They're doing what we call the air mission, so it's assess, inform, and report. And they're connecting with these organic groups that are starting to spring up with Twitter and some of the social media we're seeing. And they're reporting that back so that we can loop those people in to the fold, so that we don't have lots of different pieces of information going on out there. And we use those, what we're seeing, we actually have someone that sits in our operations center now and monitors what we see going on online. And when things look like you're getting a lot of feed into a particular area and it looks like the story is pretty consistent, then what we do is we take action at that time. So we've had to work on that ourselves because I think the initial tendency was every time you got an email message or you got a tweet or a twit or whatever they are, you would have to instantly respond. And now we follow a pattern and sort of a cycle. and look at them, at periodic times. Does that help?
Yes. It's okay? Please.
Hello, my name is Jan Bates. I'm just an ordinary citizen, but I'm very interested in everything you all have to say. Professor Hayashi, at the beginning you talked about a village, I think in Iwate Prefecture, that had moved itself inland, and so had survived with, I think, almost no fatalities. Given that, is Japan thinking about moving its population away from the coast where possible, especially given that your population is falling? So perhaps there is an opportunity there. And from Ms. Cameron, are we thinking about this in the United States, especially after Sandy and everything that happened on Long Island? Is there an argument to let the private insurance market encourage people to not live so close to the ocean?
Okay. So I should answer first. Okay, after this particular disaster, many jurisdictions that think move their residential area higher ground. But there's a lot of problem, mainly a financial thing to do that. But I think it's many communities have been thinking to do that, at least for the residential. For commercial, they could stay closer to the coast, but residential thing will be maybe changing. And then for the upcoming one in 2030s, it is very clear for that possible impact area will decrease their population very much, so that we need to relocate those residential area in a very clever way with the anticipation of potential tsunami attack.
Very good questions. I don't know how many of you listen to National Public Radio, but this morning they actually had a program on that talked about the mayor of Hoboken, New Jersey, and the plans that the mayor had for building, a diking system similar to what they have in the Netherlands. And along with that were other people saying, wait a minute, if you build that in your community, what does that mean to me? I live next door to you and we're not going to be doing that. And so, I think in the United States, all of these decisions are made locally because it's local siting boards, like land use boards that make these decisions. And so I'm sure we're going to see lots of recommendations coming out, but I've also heard chatter and plans in New York City that the mayor and I think even the governor, they've been talking a little bit about that area of Breezy Point and the houses that got burned, and is there a possibility of maybe buying those people out and letting that return to wetlands and marshes and things like that for an estuary of birds. These are all still ideas. I think we're very close to the disaster, and we haven't really seen any after-action reports yet. FEMA's first after-action report is probably going to come out in about a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And that after-action report is going to look at our operations, take a look at how we responded and things that perhaps we need to do to learn from our own shortcomings, let's say, and what can we do to improve. And then I think the next round that we'll see will start to be, lots of calls for what are you going to do with the community, and should there be a national policy, or these are all these big policy decisions that someone at my level certainly doesn't make. But once again, we need to get the whole community involved because it's the people who live there. I shouldn't be making decisions sitting in Washington, D.C. for someone who lives in Hoboken. It needs to be the people who live there, and I think our administrator and actually the way our government is set up, it supports all of that. The question about the insurance is a very interesting one. As you know, FEMA has the flood insurance program, and that's something that we manage. But in addition to that, people don't necessarily have flood insurance, but they have other insurance for their homes that, coupled with the flood insurance that we hope they had from FEMA, covers some of the costs. A big misunderstanding about the FEMA insurance program is that if your house is destroyed in a flood and you had a $400,000 house, that it's going to be, you're going to get $400,000. The maximum that you can get is $30,000. And if you've ever had a kitchen remodeled, that's about the cost of a kitchen remodeling. So I think we're going to see a lot of changes after this disaster. It's really the first one that we've had in such, I would say, an unusual urban area where we're not only involving one city, but we're talking about really 3 states because Pennsylvania was involved as well. So we have 3 states that were involved in this, and everybody needs to get together and start, talking about perhaps some solutions-based thinking. And I think our Strategic Foresight Initiative is a way for people to get involved in that and provide some good, solid ideas. There is no such thing as a bad idea. And I've been involved in futures planning for a long time, and sometimes you get your best idea from somebody who's really not in the government at all, somebody like yourself. So I'd encourage you to get involved.
Hello, my name is Matthew Carpenter. Even though both my parents are American, I was born in Japan. I lived there 21 years. I actually lived through the Hanshin earthquake. And I also worked at an NGO in Sendai for 6 months in 2011. And my question is, along with the disaster relief and management, human security is a big issue, and there are people still living in temporary housing. Where I understand mortgages are not being forgiven, for example, and there are still long-term problems associated with working with people who were affected by the tsunami and earthquakes. So I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit. Thank you.
I'm sure I'm not so clear about the question you did. So yes. So your question is how long does it take to complete the recovery?
Just general management of refugees. There's still people in temporary housing, and it's not like from the presentation. It's not just of a temporary problem. This is something that's going to be going on for years and years. And when I was in Sendai, I was told this was like a 10-year project in terms of getting the refugees back on their feet.
So about temporary housing, I'm not sure how long that they stay in temporary housing in case of 2011 event, but in case of COVID, it continued 5 years. After that, they moved to the permanent housing, so that those kind of relocation also pose a difficult problem. So that we should keep take care of those kinds of people. But the final goal of recovery is that the living from those kinds of the cares. So as far as they were taken care by the NGOs or the communities or the government, they are the so-called victim. So that how the goal, so what we should do is that taking care of them is also very important, but that how we can manage those 2 things, that the living from the cares and taking care. So that yes, that's a very difficult question, but living from the care is also important thing. So that, in a real situation, that many NGOs and the volunteer workers and the government are continuously visiting those who live in a temporary housing complex. The issue is that those who rent the ordinary housing and they stay in that place. So that from the viewpoint of the independence, they are very good. But some people need some help. But the NGO couldn't find those kind of things. This is the situation.
So my name is Clive Woods. I'm at the National Science Foundation. I'd like to make a comment, if I may, rather than a question. My comment is in my capacity as a private citizen and not on behalf of the National Science Foundation. I have the misfortune to live in Louisiana, which is a state which is, see the scowl on his
I
camera.
was there for a long time after Katrina.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's a state that has had a lot of experience of of disasters and recovering from disasters, of course. And I'd like to go back to the point about the private insurance, perhaps persuading people to move away from the coastlines. What happens in Louisiana is that my own house insurance carries a levy placed by the state government to fund the insurer of last resort in Louisiana, which is not the private insurance market. The private insurance market has indeed left the riskier parts of the state and does not insure houses right along the coastline and wetlands and so on. And the state has stepped in and said, well, we have to preserve this community, people want to live there, so we are going to create an insurer of last resort in the state. And so all the rest of the state population pays for that. And I suppose the state's motivation in doing this is, well, we've got all this land area, we want to use it, and we want to use it as best we can. And so that's what has actually happened in practice, that even though the private insurance market has abandoned that market, it does not persuade people to use it.
Right, it's the same in Florida. The same thing occurs in Florida where my son lives on the water and he has to get insurance that's provided by the state. It's really expensive. And I think it's the same thing as like the last resort insurance that you can get. Our fascination all around the world is living by the water. And everybody wants to do that. I think we look at the cities that everyone says are the most beautiful in the world, and many of them are by the water. So I don't think we're ever going to globally get over that fascination with being able to look out at the serenity of an ocean or a bay or even a lake. And yet, you know, it's the roll of the dice. If you're living there, you must accept the risk that goes along with that as well. And I think in New York, we just saw such a different case where who would ever have thought that a tropical storm would hit New York City? I think there, of course, was modeling and everything like that, and people talked about it for years. But I suspect the people that lived there never thought this would ever happen to them, just like we all think that. So, you know, once again, it's the risk that we choose to take. I live right behind the Capitol, which a lot of people say, how could you live there? It's a zone for terrorism. It's a risk I'm willing to take. So, you know, I think we all make our decisions based on that. But, you know, once again, it's the insurance part. I pay a lot of insurance to live there, so.
I think time is up. So we will be around for a few more minutes if you have extra questions. But officially, this ends today's seminar or workshop, or I forgot the formal name. I hope that the speakers may inspire something to all of you, and thank you very much for your participation.
And take one of these.
You know about that town of Fudai that survived? The one that had the